Martin Schneider.
And I'm Dan Ludwig.
And this is the story of two guys who decided to watch every episode of The Andy Griffith Show for some reason.
Essentially out of spite.
Out of spite. Why are two guys in their mid-20s in 2018 talking about The Andy Griffith Show, a show that has not been on the air for 40 years?
I think 50.
Yeah, something like that. But it's this, like, massive piece of Americana. It's, like, an important part of our culture, I guess?
I didn't think that this show was going to be very relevant. When you said you wanted to start watching this, I thought I was going to basically be squeezing blood from the stone in terms of political relevancy.
Yeah, I thought there was I made it as a joke, right?
Yeah, and now, like, having watched it, it feels, especially in these, like, apocalyptic times, like, the idea that maybe, like, stuff's ending now, it feels like we're sort of watching the beginning to the end. It feels like
the epigenesis, yeah.
It feels like watching something, like, an original sin, like an original corruption, because, like, it's this perfect little, like, Norman Rockwell portrayal of Americana, and every episode just some weird fucking evil shit slips in, and more each episode.
There's an underlying darkness to Mayberry, which honestly maybe that will be the name of the podcast, The Underlying Darkness of Mayberry.
The dark side of Mayberry.
The dark side of Mayberry. And I think there's an undercurrent of darkness to a lot of the whole, like, Americana thing. Over the Garden Wall really tapped into this.
Yeah.
Welcome to Night Vale seems to understand it as well. And the reason why, if you're not familiar with the Andy Griffith Show, it's something that your grandparents seem to love. It's a television show that premiered in October of 1960, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, that follows a small town sheriff from the fictional town of Mayberry, North Carolina, named Sheriff Andy Taylor, played by comedian Andy Griffith. And he's a single father. His aunt comes to town to help take care of his young son, played by Ronnie Howard.
That name is so unsettling.
It's weird to hear Ron Howard be referred to as Ronnie.
Yeah.
It's also weird to see him not wearing a hat to cover up his baldness.
Every time they introduce him as Ronnie Howard, I'm always, like, part of me is like, how dare you? It's Ron Howard, acclaimed director.
That is Apollo 13 director Ron Howard.
You are not his friend. You do not get to call him Ronnie.
But in this case, he's like a 6-year-old. So.
Yeah.
The reason we decided to do this, though, Dan and I, is that, a tweet from a couple of months ago during the Oscars by Mr. Bill O'Reilly, where Bill O'Reilly said, watching reruns of The Andy Griffith Show tonight instead of the Oscars. PC nitwits on parade is not entertainment. Check out BillO'Reilly.com. I'm not going to fucking plug Bill O'Reilly. Whatever.
His weird, sad podcasting phase of his post-relevancy career. Like, honestly, the YouTube channel phase of his career.
Honestly, if there's any goal I have for this, I want two dudes talking about Andy Griffith to be more popular on download charts than Bill O'Reilly. That's really the goal for this.
I can't believe it, but that's actually, I feel like that's a pretty low bar.
We can do this.
Yeah.
We can do this. But it's not just O'Reilly, right? You hear this discussion in politics all the time. Congressmen who are not old enough to remember the Andy Griffith Show will say things like, we didn't have school shootings. Back in my day, there was, Andy Griffith and Aunt B taking care of Ronnie. It's a lack of family values. And they like to point to the Andy Griffith Show as this, like, touchstone for what family values or what things should be. So I was curious, what is it about this show that makes it really the simpler times that they are longing for? Well, this fictional show.
I want to talk about the gauntlet you threw down at Bill O'Reilly, because one of the reasons you wanted to do this podcast was you wanted to count each and every time that something happened on the Andy Griffith Show that Bill O'Reilly would have fucking hated.
Yeah, it's true.
But, in retrospect, having watched a lot of the Andy Griffith Show, I think as we go through that scene by scene, advantage O'Reilly.
Well, what I was thinking of specifically was, because this comes up in gun control arguments, and in later seasons, Andy has a big, like, monologue about why he doesn't carry a gun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's law enforcement. And it's also a joke on the show that Barney Fife he carries a gun, but he's not allowed to carry bullets.
Yeah. because he frequently accidentally shoots it
into
the floor, ceiling, and direction of people.
He uses it like a ruler.
I'm gonna have a lot of screaming to do about Barney Fife.
Yeah, he's awful.
I mean, it's the weirdest mixture of shit that Bill O'Reilly would have hated and shit that I imagine even Bill O'Reilly would say, oh, Jesus Christ. At times, it is genuinely more simple and innocent and wholesome. Andy Griffith doesn't carry a gun and sort of speaks to that account. But it also crazily normalizes gun violence. Andy Griffith is anti-carrying a gun, but Barney Fife accidentally shooting a gun off in a room with a child is treated as just like, Barney.
It's a gag.
Yeah.
All right, so let's not do any further ado in this. Let's get into, we're going to do the first 2 episodes. Episode 1, which premiered on October 3rd, 1960, is called The New Housekeeper, directed by series creator Sheldon Leonard. Episode 2, which we'll get into, is called The Manhunt.
It jumps up a level so suddenly. The first one.
Titles.
The first one is just like the overarching conflict is Ronnie Howard is mean, and the second one is there's an escaped convict on the loose and he's taking hostages.
The titles. Episode 1, The New Housekeeper. Episode 2, The Manhunt.
It should be in all caps because that's no one says manhunt on that entire episode. They scream
manhunt.
Manhunt.
Oh, we're gonna have to work on our Don Knotts impressions for the duration of this show.
My Don Knotts is a Jerry Seinfeld who has been hit by a car.
Mine is Jimmy Stewart having a stroke.
Yeah. I mean, I worked on mine a lot. I think the reason you involved me in this show is months and months and months ago, I accidentally convinced my roommate that there was an episode of the Andy Griffith Show where Don Knotts accidentally shoots a kid, and spent an entire increasingly drunk night doing the monologue from Die Hard. It looked real enough, Andy! Oh, God! They teach you a lot of things at the academy. They don't teach you how to live with a mistake. I'm terrible at impressions, and my Don Knotts goes off the rails almost immediately, but my strategy's just been Jerry Seinfeld, who has been hit by a car and is slowly bleeding out on the side of the road. But yeah.
Episode 1!
Yeah. I didn't know how relevant that tweet was going to be because it's super feasible that could be an episode.
Yeah.
Episode 1, sorry.
Episode 1. Episode 1, I'll read the Wikipedia description. After the Taylor's old housekeeper, Rose, gets married and moves away, Aunt B moves in to take care of Andy and Opie, but Opie will not accept her. So this is our table setting episode. This is the pilot that they had to get approved by the network, and it sets up the dynamic of our main characters.
And it seems like in the first one, the primary conflict is going to be Andy is trying to teach lessons to his son, who is an asshole?
I gotta say, look, I understand it was 1960, but our standards for what defines a cute kid on television have gone way, way up.
I'm genuinely, and this is a thing I think I'm going to be figuring out for a long time. Right, the kid's name is Opie.
His name is Opie, yeah.
It's going to be really hard to just not call him Ronnie. I can't figure out if Opie is an asshole in the way that children are realistically assholes. It could just be a really realistic portrayal of how mean a kid can be. For example, interrupting a wedding.
Yeah, let's start up with the first scene. So the first scene, we are introduced to Andy. He's the sheriff, but he's also a justice of the peace. Mm-hmm. And he's performing a wedding for this couple that apparently has no friends. It's just Andy's former housekeeper and her new husband. And they're getting married, and the only people there to witness it are the sheriff, his deputy, and the sheriff's son.
And Opie loudly they do a whole thing of speak now or forever hold your peace, and they do a whole who's on first back and forth about whether or not Opie is allowed to object, yada yada, and
which I liked, to be honest. It was funny.
It was it was some nice Abbott and Costello, like, back and forth, like, semantics shit.
Right. Yeah. They ask you to speak your piece, and then they tell you to shut up. It was kind of funny. Yeah,
and then Andy Griffith makes a joke about beating his kid.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, like you're gonna be holding your rear if you don't shut up. Like, so far the only time he's referenced beating his child, but, like...
Yeah.
But, like, the entire time that was happening, I was like, is interrupting a wedding because you don't want the person to get married a thing a normal dick kid would do? Or is this kid the fucking devil? Like, I can't tell if he's, like, not supernaturally, but, like, above and beyond the normal capacity. Like, is Opie a sociopath?
That's a good question. We're going to put a pin in that, and we'll refer back to it in future episodes.
I'm going to ask it so many fucking times.
The Opie Sociopath Watch is going to be like our regular segment on this show.
It's going to be a regular segment in my life as I stare out a fucking window drinking whiskey. It is my what is the sound of one hand clapping? Is Opie a sociopath?
So Opie interrupts the wedding because he doesn't want his former housekeeper Rose, who he really likes, to get married and move away and no longer to go take care of another man, right?
Yeah.
Now, Sheriff Taylor, because he's a single dad, I'm assuming he's a widower, is unable to take care of this kid by himself. Although, to be honest, we see this kid running around Mayberry unattached all the fucking time.
This kid, again, could be the 1950s. This kid, like, is in charge of himself. Like, no one tells Opie what to do, even vaguely.
So, he's throwing a fit. Now, Andy has called up his aunt, his aunt, Aunt B, which is Ron Howard's great aunt. Opie's great aunt. Yeah, it was... The relationship is not really established.
It was, it was the woman who raised Sheriff Taylor, who in my head, he's just Andy fucking Griffith, because it's the Andy Griffith Show and not the Sheriff Taylor Show.
Right.
But yeah, no, she's the woman who raised him, who is just, I guess, on deck to consistently raise a child. Like,
she says that, though. She says that she was, like, bored. Like, she raised a kid, and then she got old, and now she was just sitting there bored, and she got really excited at the idea of raising another kid.
Which I think is maybe a 1950s idea of what it is to be an older, unmarried woman, that she's just, like, sitting in a crate ready to be, like, crowbarred open and brought out to raise a child.
Nanny bod.
Yeah.
Nanny-tron.
She's just sitting in an empty room eating stale bread until a child is brought before her to raise.
She's at, like, a spinsterage?
Yeah!
It's just like an orphanage where there are just old ladies. Like, it's her, and then Amelia Bedelia, and then, like, Rosie from the Jets, and it's just, like, a whole line of like, child rearers.
Yeah, just fucking, like, I guess you can just rent them from a fucking store, like, and get a store credit when you bring them back.
But, so she's very excited. So after a while, it takes her a couple of days to get there. We're treated to a bunch of Barney Fife shenanigans. We're introduced to the deputy Barney Fife, who is very, very letter of the law, out of control with this. And we learn the reason why he got this job is because he's Andy's cousin. Can
we take a brief, like, tangent to talk about fucking Barney Fife, the most terrifying character I've ever seen in a goddamn TV show?
Yeah, go for it.
But, alright, so if you took Barney Fife and described him as a person existing in modern day America, you would be so scared shitless of the idea of this person walking around. Because he is a veteran of, in this case, World War II.
Right, he and Andy both served. Mm-hmm. I want to get into this later because the timeline of this is very strange.
Who very clearly has some issues as a result of having served. He's super jumpy, super aggressively in need of regulations and validation.
Yeah.
Like, there's definitely, and he mentions the war as a reason why Barney is really uptight and jittery. So, vague hints that Barney might have their a 1950s understanding of PTSD.
Yeah.
Who is super, constantly waving around a firearm because that he is, as we mentioned before, not allowed to have bullets in because the sheriff is actually afraid of him shooting someone. He's that unhinged, and he often will tell you that he is unhinged and dangerous. At one point he says, when I get going, you need to be there to stop me. I'm dangerous.
Yeah. And the joke of that is that this, like, meek, mild man, like meek, tiny, skinny old man is not dangerous. That's supposed to be the gag. But he very much is. He
is a police officer who is constantly looking for ways to aggressively wield his authority and often bemoans how little crime there is because he doesn't get to arrest people.
He's basically Nick Frost's character in Hot Fuzz. Like, where he's complaining about not getting proper action and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, like, he's the way that a modern day corrupt police officer views the police officer that accidentally shoots a kid. Where, like, he's like, oh, that's just Barney. You know, he's not a bad guy.
Not a bad guy.
He's just a little trigger happy. He accidentally shot that guy. Oh, you know Barney. He's not bad. He's the way that that wildly unqualified cops are viewed by the police officers that enable him. Like, he's sort of like the template, like, for, it's sort of back to the thing of feeling like this is where something went wrong, that, like, I think for generations, like, shitty cop behavior has just been like, oh, he's just being a Barney.
Yeah,
like,
just a Barney Fife.
Also, Sherry, and they make a joke out of this early on, not at all qualified to have his job, hired because of nepotism. He is the sheriff's cousin.
Yep. Let's move forward a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Aunt May gets there. Aunt B gets there.
It's like muscle memory.
Right. Aunt B gets there, and she's very excited to be raising another child. And she thinks it's going to be just like raising Andy, but it is not.
Opie might be a sociopath?
Opie's kind of a spoiled brat.
Opie is constantly coming at her 24/7. Like, he is on her shit about everything that she is not able to do even a little bit.
Right, which is stuff like hunting a frog or swinging a baseball bat.
Yeah. Stupid kid shit.
Yeah, stupid kid shit, which I get it. A kid would care about that. And so there are some jokes at Aunt B's expense. Andrew tries to show how good she is at these things. Like, no, Aunt B can swing a baseball, and hands her the bat and she holds it upside down. Yeah. Takes some fishing, and Aunt B is, like, not even got her pole in the water. You know, a couple of gags like that. But what she can do, because what a woman can do, is she can cook. And she can cook great chicken and dumplings.
Yeah.
So there's this whole subplot where Ronnie. Opie, doesn't want to admit that he likes the cooking, so he, like, sneaks it upstairs and pretends that he fed the chicken to his bird.
Yeah. And there's a prolonged bit about Andy Griffith, like, oh, like, must be a pterodactyl able to eat that much chicken. Like, it's, or he calls it a vulture or some shit.
Opie says that he wants to run away from home.
Yeah.
And Andy's like, well, you're not supposed to tell your folks you're running away from home, but I'll help you write the note. Which is a gag that they use again in a couple of episodes.
Oh, fuck.
But, yeah.
But much darker.
Way darker. No, we'll get to it then.
The Amber Alert he causes.
We'll get to that in a future episode. And so it's folksy, and then the final punchline of this episode is Aunt B's, like, just about had it, and she's just about to give up. Oh, there's also a bit about the bird escaping. The bird flies away, and then the bird comes back. No, that's bullshit. They got another bird.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh my god, I didn't realize that at the time.
Oh yeah, no, they totally got a different bird.
I am as dumb as that child.
The final gag is that Aunt B's about to go away, but then Opie says, no, we have to keep her. What's she gonna do? She can't even catch frogs or play baseball. How can she live? We have to keep her to take care of her. And everybody gets a good laugh, and Andy plays guitar, and he plays the theme song, The Fishing Hole.
So a weird thing is that resolution was weirdly Seinfeldian in that, like, it sort of adhered to, like, the no hugging, no learning thing in the most fucked up way, because, like, there is hugging, but the lesson that Opie learns is this, like, the show ends and he has failed as a parent because Opie doesn't understand, like, empathy towards this woman that is his caretaker. He is still openly, like, insolent towards this woman who is basically a mother figure to him, and he's like, well, he's going to obey, so close enough. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like, Opie's whole shtick at the end there is just like he thinks of himself as the caretaker for her. Which, I get, I'm not a parent, but maybe if you gotta trick your kid into thinking this is their idea, which I think is the idea behind it, maybe that's a good thing. But, I think it's a bad idea to have your child be, openly disrespectful of your, competency as a human being.
Yeah, no, the child to think he's the boss of you.
Again, this is a sitcom staple, right? This is not exclusive to the Andy Griffith Show.
Yeah, again, it's more fucked up than than it should be for the tone, which is a weird thing that keeps happening where it's oh, that's not super messed up for a sitcom. It's definitely super messed up for the way this sitcom is presenting it.
Okay, and that's something I want to get into. Now, we're kind of rushing through the first episode because the first episode's boring.
I watched the first episode and I was I'm gonna have nothing to goddamn talk about.
Yeah. There's one thing, you mentioned the way that the show is presented. This show premieres October 2nd, 1960. It is 1960, and I want to keep that in mind. We are about to elect John F. Kennedy. The Kennedy-Nixon debate. I looked up at the stuff that was happening in October of 1960 at the time. Why the hell does everything feel like the Great Depression in this show? They have cars, and they reference, the war, but everything feels very, oh brother, where art thou-ish, right? Lots of, hobos, stealing pies off windows and shit.
I kind of have a theory about that. It's working, but one thing I noticed about the first episode that carries through all the other ones is nothing matters except people's feelings. There's no real stakes whatsoever, even for things where there should be stakes. The only thing that matters is someone's feelings hurt? Is someone upset? And I think it's sort of during this really tumultuous time in America where there's a bunch of... everyone has shell shock from this massive war that just happened. We're going into a period of massive social upheaval. I think Mayberry is supposed to be this almost Narnia-esque world where it's still the Great Depression, but it's also modern times and nothing matters and there's no real crime, there's fake crime. I think it's supposed to be a fantasy land.
Well, that's kind of the point I'm getting at with this, right? Is that everybody refers to this show as the way things used to be and the way things ought to be, but even when it premiered, it was anachronistic. It was an escapist vehicle from the get-go, so it was not even accurate for the time that it came out. And as we go further into the 60s, I'm very curious how this goes. Does Opie get into the Beatles? What do they land on the moon in Mayberry? Does anyone talk about that? Because we're going through a huge tumultuous time. And remember, with most television shows, again, not exclusive to the Andy Griffith Show, but you got to figure the age of the people writing and producing it, right? The reason why the Andy Griffith Show feels like it's the 1930s to the early 1940s is because, they thought of this as a father and son vehicle, and the frame of reference for all the writers and stuff on this was their childhoods.
Yeah.
It's kind of I like to use this reference whenever I can talk about it. It's that weird episode of Sabrina the Teenage Witch where Sabrina gets really excited to meet the violent femmes.
I should have watched Sabrina the Teenage Witch for that. You should have given me a primer that this was going to be a subject I would need to engage in.
There's another podcast called Sabrina the Teenage Watch, which is 3 British dudes watching every episode of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. But there's an episode of Sabrina the Teenage Witch where Sabrina and friends are very excited to meet the violent femmes. And it makes no fucking sense because there's no reason why any teenager in 1999 would be excited to meet the violent femmes. You know who likes the violent femmes? The 45-year-old men writing that episode of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. So I always think about that whenever I look at terrible anachronistic sitcoms. It's think about who was writing and creating this.
Yeah, I mean, there is sort of a thing of, Andy Griffith is a dad figure, but you can sort of tell he's the dad that an adult in the 1950s wishes they had had.
Now, according to Wikipedia, Andy's character changes in the latter seasons. He's more of a, real stoic figure. In these early episodes, he's kind of a, like, goof off. I'm gonna reference another television show right now. It's kind of like the latter episodes of King of the Hill, where, like, they cranked up the silliness of everybody else to 11, so that Hank could be the, like, stoic, solid one. I think that's the part that Andy Griffith falls into. And I think it's okay for us to keep referencing all these other television sitcoms, because, like, a lot of TV dads draw from Andy Griffith.
Yeah.
He's kind of, more so than, whatever the hell, Ward Cleaver, right?
Yeah.
Like, Ward Cleaver did not have the staying power that Andy Griffith does.
I don't totally know who Ward Cleaver is, so case in point.
Yeah, all right. Leave it to Beaver.
Oh, right, yes. Yeah. I'm really interested to find out what the fuck happens with Andy Griffith in later seasons, because more than him being bumbling in season 1, he is a little bit bumbling. He's always right in every episode. I think Manhunt will sort of introduce my thesis in this. I think Andy Griffith season 1 Andy Griffith at least, might be the goddamn devil. And season 1 Andy Griffith has an acidic relationship with the law.
I mean, if you're going to tell me that the devil is a, like, charming North Carolina sheriff, fuck yeah, I'll buy that. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, he's, the devil talks like Foghorn Leghorn. I think we've agreed on that as a society.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
But, I mean, Andy, like, he takes a real flexible view with morality, the law. Basically, he uses the concept of the greater good to get away with a lot of bullshit. And the thing is that's kind of freaky is the show always validates, like, Andy Griffith is always right.
Andy is never wrong, except when it comes to women. But he's still rewarded by that point.
Oh,
yeah.
Again, I need 3 hours to discuss Andy Griffith and women, which I never thought would be a thing I would need 3 hours to talk about.
The girlfriend we know in this first season, by the way, is not his girlfriend in later seasons.
What?
That's what, spoiler alert.
I'm aggressively refusing to read the Wikipedia page, because apparently, like, they de-Flanderize Andy Griffith in, as they go, and I'm really interested to see if he's less bumbling, but also still a monster.
Let's find out. Alright, well, so let's move straight into that, to episode 2, The Manhunt, which premiered a week later, October 10th, directed by, Hollywood director Don Weiss, who directed, like, the next 8 episodes, so we're gonna hear his name a lot.
The tonal shift between episode 1 and episode 2 is abruptly Don Knotts coming into the room and screaming, "Manhunt!
Manhunt!
We got a manhunt!"
Like, honestly, or, he also used a term like, dragnet!
Yeah, because they're still doing episode 1 at the beginning of the episode. They're like, oh, this is the way you catch a fish. You use ham. And then Don Knotts kicks his way onto the set and is like, "Manhunt! We got a manhunt!"
Kicks his way onto the set, which is outdoors, by the way. Because they're on a lake.
A different show punches its way onto the show you're watching, and suddenly it's the fucking Shield, where a sheriff is breaking the law to enforce the law, and in a dangerous game of wits with an escaped criminal.
And he's not getting any support by the higher-ups.
Yeah!
The feds who don't understand it. Yeah, so yeah, but you mentioned it, right? We should mention that because it plays into this. So, the show opens with Andy and Opie out on the lake. They're enjoying some father-son bonding. They're catching fish together using a ham sandwich. And they have to paddle back to shore very quickly, which is, like, they're only like 20 feet out. Like, they were barely out that lake. But they have to paddle back out real quick because the boat forms a hole.
I think it should be established early on that they treat the sinking boat like a very serious issue that they could potentially get in a lot of trouble for. They are in a pond. They're not, they call it a lake. It is a pond. It is mini golf course size pond.
Yeah, Andy Griffith is what, like 6'2"? He could stand up and just carry Opie on his shoulders and walk away.
Yeah.
Like,
it is in no way a crisis
They are in zero danger.
But they need to establish, like, being on this sinking boat in this pond is a big fucking deal.
Yeah, it's a Chekhov's gun.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
there are a lot of Chekhov's guns that they establish, including an actual gun.
Yeah. So they're out on the lake, but then Barney drives up in his car, vehicle or siren still going, old timey siren, which I appreciated. and he says that a criminal escaped from prison, and the state police think he may be coming this way.
Should it be the rule that we have to do a shitty Don Knotts impression every time we quote Don Knotts?
Maybe?
Yeah.
I feel like that would get really, long. I feel like it would get really tiring to listen to after a while.
We're gonna listen to this episode, see how agonizing it is to hear us do a Don Knotts impression, and make the call based off of that.
That's fair. All right.
It sonically may be just, acid upon the brain.
I don't know that I can not do a Don Knotts impression. I mean, it'll be harder for me not to do
it. They're gonna happen.
So, Don Knotts pulls up as Barney and says, "We have a manhunt."
Andy, we have a manhunt. We must away.
So he calls the sheriff back to his office, which is also the jail cell, right? And they kick out. This is the first time we see Otis, the town drunk, who's going to be a recurring character on the show. They say, "Otis, you gotta go." He was sitting there in the drunk tank, and Otis is just like, "Oh, okay, well, good thing I gotta get out of here anyway. I gotta go to choir practice." And that's the joke, right? That the town drunk is going to choir practice.
I mean, it sort of establishes the status quo of crime in Mayberry that, it's almost sort of a game. Everyone's, there's no hard feelings about crime in Mayberry because they let Otis lock himself out of the jail. The joke is Otis could have left any time, and they're just see you next week, Otis. And, they have an arrangement. It's a Candyland version of crime.
I'm going to keep referring to Hot Fuzz because I refer to Hot Fuzz all the time.
Of course.
Again, it's the same deal in Hot Fuzz where it's a small town, so it's a joke that even the chief of police's son, who is a constable himself, they're just like, "Oh, it's fine. Just he'll buy everybody ice cream."
Yeah,
and that's his punishment for drunk driving.
Yeah, no, basically.
So this trope probably originates there.
Of sort of non-crime as a joke, or fake crime as a joke.
Sure.
Yeah.
So,
I'm going to keep trying to come up with a term for this.
Sure. Griffith crime! So the joke is that, the town drunk reaches through the bars, he grabs the keys, he lets himself out, and they're like, "All right, cool. Because they got to clear him out of the jail, because in case they catch that criminal, because they got 2 jail cells." And
Don Knotts, and it's sort of presented as a joke, but it's one of those things that feels weirdly sinister, where Don Knotts is really insecure about the lack of crime in their town, and is like, "Oh, they'll judge us for the lack of crime in our town, Andy." That one, I feel like I got a little bit of Don Knotts on that one.
You're close.
I got a piece of it.
You're close.
But yeah.
There are 8 seasons. Let's pace ourselves.
Yeah. No, it's going to be I'm going to have this refined to an artful Don Knotts by the end. It'll be like we dug him up and electrocuted him back to life. So
he's concerned about the lack of crime. Because he wants to look big in front of these state police guys that are showing up.
But
because they don't want to. That's right. They don't want to let Otis go.
Yeah,
he's upset. We can't let Otis go. He's our only prisoner.
Yeah, but it's sort of just the idea of a police officer being insecure about the lack of people he has locked up. It's presented as something quaint, but at the moment, I saw that and a shiver went down my spine. I was like, "Oh!"
It's gonna be the first time where I'm actually kind of happy there's no black people in Mayberry.
God damn it! If there were, I don't know if that's going. Are there going to be black people in Mayberry later on? What is Barney going to do to them?
No.
Oh God!
Which is the real reason why Bill O'Reilly really likes the idea of Mayberry.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. No. I think there is sort of the connection in their heads of none of these people are going to say it out loud, but in Bill O'Reilly's fucking head, he's like, "Look at this town with no black people and no crime."
Yeah. So Barney's insecure, and the state police show up and to consult with local law enforcement, and this is also a theme in the show, is that anybody who is not from Mayberry is a dick, right? And they just kind of make fun of Mayberry. So they show up. They have this map that they show up. Barney and Andy are fucking amazed by the concept of magnets.
Yeah,
they're just shocked that there's maps that are made of metal and magnets that they can stick to.
There is I think conservatively 3 reoccurring bits of Andy trying to figure out magnets. He gets a, I think, 3-minute monologue on how they don't have magnets in the town. They have pins, but also they're out of pins because they
used the last one for a sewing competition for, like, I don't know, whatever they're, like a church thing.
Yeah.
So they're really, like, just amazed by this newfangled technology that the state police come down. The state police come down and the officer in charge gives out the assignments. Andy does a little bit of local policing. He points out that all they've done is cover the main roads, and an escaped convict would probably be covering some of the side roads that we've got here in Mayberry. And that input is thrown aside because this is again a recurring idea that people from the big city are gonna just discount anything that the small town sheriff has to say.
I feel like the big city police captain, I think that's just sort of the actor that you hired whenever you needed someone to play an asshole back then. Like, I think whenever someone was a dick on the Twilight Zone, they would just be like, get me the guy who plays this captain.
Well, let's take a look. Take a look at the Manhunt. Captain Barker, played by Ken Lynch. Let's take a look at Ken Lynch's other, Ken Lynch had a pretty long career. He went all the way into, the original Battlestar Galactica. Was on, looks like he does a lot of cop stuff. Oh, he was a regular on Gunsmoke.
Yeah, I feel like when hearing his voice, it just sounds like the archetypal voice of a cop being a dick.
Yeah, and he was on Bonanza. This guy went on in Adam and 12. Yeah, he's the reason why because he's played every dick cop you ever saw for about 40 years.
I guarantee that he played a dick cop somehow on MASH. He was a military police officer who hassled Klinger.
Looks like we're gonna see a lot of him. It looks like he's got at least 4 more appearances on the Andy Griffith Show, playing different characters, including an FBI agent.
Hell yes.
Yeah. And then
there's gonna be a serial killer in Mayberry.
Yeah! It's gonna be the profiler.
Manhunt 2!
I want to get to the later episode where they're running out of shit.
Yeah. There's gonna be a murder in Mayberry eventually, right? Because we're partway through season 1. They've gone through a lot of crimes, but fucking.
All right, so the city or the state cops show up. They basically make Barney feel like shit. And to be honest, here's the thing, right? I realize that we're supposed to be against the state police for looking down on the yokels. But when one of those 2 yokels is Barney Fife,
yeah,
you have every reason to discard what these men are saying.
I mean, pretty justifiably discard them because one of them is Barney Fife and the other one marveled about magnets for 20 fucking minutes. I would not listen to that man about anything he does. Andy Griffith pretty immediately establishes that he's a moron who should not be listened to in something as delicate as a manhunt. Absolutely not. Throughout the entire thing, I was pretty on the side of this police chief, the police captain wants to do things by the book and according to regulation, which during a manhunt I feel is a pretty good call.
Pretty appropriate time to follow regulations.
You don't do a manhunt like jazz. You don't.
There's no improving a manhunt.
Yeah, Andy Griffith is let's play this fast and loose and fucking no.
Barney Fife at this point is like Ryan Gosling in La La Land. Look how he's playing. Now he's gonna take over a thing over here, and I'll
listen to the notes he doesn't play. But yeah, no, throughout the whole thing, the cop is a dick, and we're presented as he's. The cop is played by the guy who archetypally plays shithead cops.
Yeah.
But, throughout the entire thing, he's just doing his job pretty by the goddamn letter and getting frustrated with these yokels who keep taking a shit in his manhunt.
Alright, so what's the next thing that happens? He basically leaves it to Andy and Barney, if you want to do the back roads, do whatever you want.
No. He basically says, stay here, man the radio. At which point, Andy and Barney just kind of hang out in the station and are like, well, they're just saving us for the big showdown.
Right. Oh, we should mention at this point that Opie has a role here. Because Opie's the one that's like, I bet my pa can catch him. My pa's the smartest lawman on the planet, right?
I mean, at one point early in the episode, Opie says, you're more important than any other person in the entire world, and Andy Griffith only half talks him out of it. He's like, yeah, like, and Andy Griffith enjoys not telling his son that he's the most important person in the universe, which later bites him in the ass when the son is like, hold on, you're the most important person in the universe. Why the fuck are you getting sidelined on this manhunt?
I mean, to be honest, I feel like that's a recurring theme in this, is like, Andy does something kind of dumb but well-meaning with his son, and then it bites him in the ass 10 minutes later.
Andy Griffith teaches his son a super shitty lesson that his son then acts on, and Andy Griffith needs to scramble to half solve it.
Yeah, that's a recurring plot line throughout.
Yeah.
In fact, we'll keep track of it.
Including the Amber Alert that Andy Griffith causes.
Correct. We cannot... Yeah, that's going to be what episode 4... We're just going to call it the Amber Alert. We're going to build to it.
Yeah. But yeah, so basically they post up and they lick their wounds and they're content to just contribute helpfully to the manhunt. And then Opie essentially comes in, like it's an Along Came the Spider thing, where Opie comes in and gets right up in Andy Griffith's ego and starts like really just turning the screws on Andy Griffith's sense of self and importance. Like, if you're at all valuable as a man and a human being, why are you not allowed in this manhunt, Pa? What sort of self-respecting adult would allow himself to not be in this manhunt? I'm strongly implying that I'll stop viewing you as a father figure if you don't catch this criminal. It's literally like Opie comes in.
Everyone in this fucking show is emotionally manipulated by this toddler.
And then Opie essentially leads a parade of townspeople like, come on in and call my dad a pussy. Like,
yes!
Like, come on in, bumpkins. Talk shit on this sheriff until he does something wildly irresponsible. This supports my theory that maybe Opie is a sociopath. Like,
you know what?
Point of evidence 2.
You know what? Your original concept was maybe Andy Griffith is the devil? That redheaded bastard is the devil. Andy Griffith is just a man who is being tempted.
I think apple does not fall far from the tree. I'm just trying to figure out who the fuck the tree is. I can't figure out who the original evil is. They're both bad people.
All right. So Dan, what do they do in response to this?
In response to this, Andy Griffith then takes a very loose stance with the law and is like, well, we can break chain of command in a dire emergency situation and go out and try to find this escaped convict ourselves. Reloads Don Knotts' gun.
Right.
He had previously taken all the bullets out because Don Knotts, as we mentioned earlier, accidentally discharged his weapon into the ground inches away from his son's face.
Yeah.
Like, Opie was an arm's length away from Don Knotts when Don Knotts' firearm went off, and then after that, Andy Griffith says, all right, give me your gun, I'm gonna reload this and send you out amongst the general populace.
So they set up a roadblock on one of the roads that was being ignored by state police, right?
Again, originally, not a bad idea.
Sure.
Yeah.
They set up a roadblock. They set up a roadblock with Barney in charge.
That's the bad idea.
So Barney is pulling over everyone. Now, to be fair to Barney, we were just talking about how this is a time when you should follow regulations. But Barney pulls over literally his own mother.
Yeah.
And frisks her.
And accuses her of being, not accuses, but presents it as a very realistic possibility that she is the convict in a very realistic mask.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is also a gag that I saw on Brooklyn Nine-Nine 2 days ago. So, more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah.
So Barney is, he's using his authority. He's very excited that he can finally, push people around and stop their cars.
Barney is rock hard through this entire scene, exercising his authority over his mother, the mayor, and a random farmer.
Just a quivering boner.
Yeah.
Back in there.
Barney
the whole man is an erection.
This entire scene.
Except for when the criminal actually shows up.
Yeah.
Right?
At which point, the criminal, who is actually, they got an actor who is legitimately scary. Like, he is a pile of angry meat, this fucking actor.
Yeah. So a generally terrifying human being. Right?
Almost, like, surprisingly scary for, like,
Episode 2 of the Andy Griffith Show.
I thought it was gonna be, like, some skinny little, like mustachioed, like, greaser evil guy, and it's like, it was a guy that I would be afraid of today.
Yeah. No, this was a scary looking dude.
Comes over the hill and basically beats the living shit out of Barney Fife and takes his gun.
Yep, leaves him tied up naked by the side of the road. Now, I will say this, though, to Andy's credit, Andy was right about the road.
Yeah, you did make the right call, but he left Barney Fife, the very disqualified officer, who he only hired because he is his fucking cousin, in charge of this road. So he put a super, like, again, it's sort of like this weird thing of, like, excusing super shitty cops, where it's like, yeah.
So now our escaped convict has a gun.
Yeah. Which, and they explain that to the police captain, who justifiably chews them out. Like, yeah, super justifiably, like, you guys have armed this escaped dangerous convict, putting not only all of his men, but the entire town in danger. And literally, it comes back to the thing of nothing in Mayberry matters except people's feelings, because at no point does anyone mention the convict is dangerous now. They're just like, we really goofed and no one respects me and I have not been shown that, like, I'm really sad, and also Opie doesn't respect me and Barney's sad, and we're not going to mention the dangerous man who can kill 6 people now as a result of my actions. Yeah. Nothing in Mayberry, not Mayberry, nothing in this show matters, even when it matters.
I gotta be honest, man, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I feel like the same people who praise Mayberry are also the facts not feelings crowd. Yeah, it's the most feelings-heavy show imaginable. All that anyone cares about is not each other's feelings, really. Their own feelings. Yeah. Or just the general feelings of the town. Mayberry's a cult. Yeah. Mayberry's a fucking cult, and we'll get into that. That's going to be another recurring theme. Yeah. But, alright, so, the next thing that happens, now they dock them this. So, what happens next, Dan? So, after that, Andy comes up with this great idea of where he thinks the criminal is going to go, based off of a pie on a windowsill, which I don't know if originated the trope of irresistible pies on old ladies' windows. No, that was a thing from a long time ago. Yeah. Right, yeah. But again, right? Like, it's hobo time. Yeah, no! Like, he uses hobo logic to hunt down the escaped convict. Yeah, right? They go to the house where an old woman always has pies on her windowsill. His logic is, even a non-starving man can't resist the taste of the smell of one of those pies. It's a fucking Hostess fruit pie ad from the comics of the 1980s. Yeah! Like, it's one of those ads where it's just like, Green Lantern's gonna save us with Twinkies! Yeah, exactly! Like, they use Green Lantern couldn't do that because Twinkies are yellow, but, whatever. I think it was usually Spider-Man. Yeah. It was Hostess fruit pies. Yeah! Oh, God. But they go to the house where the convict is currently holding a woman hostage at gunpoint. I forgot about that. Yeah. Okay, so they go to the door. They talk to the woman whose pie they presume had been stolen. Very immediately surmise that she is being held hostage because this woman who is normally very talkative isn't very talkative. Also, her eyes are screaming the entire conversation. Right. They go... And let's go ahead and point this out. Like, this is a good scene, right? Yeah! Like that woman and the convict, they played this very well, right? But the freaky thing is, this woman is in a life and death scenario, undoubtedly scared shitless, and Andy Griffith is unbreakingly, like, still, aw shucks, the same as he was about putting ham on your bait to catch fish. Like... He is unwaveringly chipper in the face of a woman who is staring down, like, 60% chance of death. He looks her in the eye and does not help. And puts out bait so that, the convict will eventually,
land himself in that Chekhov's boat established earlier.
Right. And rather than get on the radio and call back and say he's at this house, he sets up a trail of breadcrumbs leading this convict to the boat. He says something like, well, listen, whatever you do, don't tell that convict that I have a boat out on the lake.
And he established, and it's a pretty good instance of sort of community-based policing and de-escalation of violence. But on the other hand, he just left that woman there. He just walked the fuck away from a place where he knew a dangerous convict was holding a woman at gunpoint and just, strolled whistling away. He had absolutely no assurances in the fucking world that convict was not going to shoot that woman in the face before trying to steal that boat.
Yeah, do they even say what this man was, in prison for?
No, but it looked like it was murder.
Yeah. By the way, I'm looking up the actor who played our escaped convict. The character's name is Derrickson. The actor's name was Frank Gersel. And again, it looks like he also had a career well into the 70s. Playing kind of the bad guys in all these. Once again, he's on Gunsmoke, Perry Mason. It was a good time for character actors.
Can we just take a moment and marinate in how kick-ass a name that is? Was it Frank Gressel?
Frank Gersel.
Gersel, still good.
Yeah, right. It's a good name.
That's
a hard-boiled name.
That's a detective name. Yeah. That's a detective name you don't see much these days.
Yeah, that's a good one.
God damn it.
Damn, looks like he would have had a longer career, but he died in 1970, age 54.
How did he die, Marty?
In a hail of bullets. Yeah. There's no fucking way.
In a punch tornado. He had all the blood punched out of his body.
Narrating about the woman that he lost.
Yeah.
He died in black and white.
He died the way he lived, terrifyingly.
Okay, so he leads this trail, and he just abandons that woman.
He leaves that woman to die.
Yeah.
By all accounts, that woman, the convict should shoot that woman in the face. If I'm, that was the logical move to kill her.
No witnesses, right?
And he never goes back to check. Yeah. He's never let's go make sure that Margaret's alive.
Does Margaret not have a back door, dude? Can you maybe... Send Barney around the back and maybe get lucky? I don't know.
Honestly, we're taking it completely on face value that she wasn't immediately killed just because it's Mayberry, but there's no scene of her tied up.
There's no evidence, yeah. So, it's entirely possible that Andy Griffith just got a woman murdered.
Yeah, which is now what happened in my fucking head.
Oh, that's the headcanon. Yeah.
We're starting a tally, Andy Griffith hypothetical body count.
All right.
It's gonna be high.
So then Andy, radios the chief or the captain of police. Says, we encountered him. We don't know where he's at, but we know where he's gonna be. Mm. And he takes everyone to the lake. The pond. Right? And I gotta say, I wonder, where did this convict think he was gonna go?
He said, you take that boat out across the lake and it's clear shooting. Again, mini golf course sized lake. Literally, he has covered, he's covered, I think a quarter mile in boat speed, so slower than walking.
Right.
He probably could have walked around this pond at the same speed or faster.
Yeah, he could have just gone in the lake.
Yeah. But Chekhov's gun fulfilled. The boat sinks. He swims back to shore. At one point, one of the deputies is about to shoot.
Yeah, they've got him in crosshairs, right?
And it is sort of it's one of those point you against O'Reilly. Andy Griffith aggressively de-escalates a situation of a man being shot.
Right.
O'Reilly would probably be fire away.
That's true. Yeah. So in this scenario, they're watching from the road. They watch this man get in the boat and start to paddle away, and the captain's just like, "What are you doing? You're letting him get away!" And just chewing him out. And Andy's like, "Just wait."
Yeah,
this is a game for him because he's used to game crime.
He's Bugs Bunnying it.
Right, exactly. And one of the other deputies takes out a fucking rifle.
Yeah,
just all right. I got a clear shot on him, Captain. Again, remember, the last episode of this show was about a woman who didn't know how to play baseball.
Yeah, no, there is a sniper rifle aimed at a man's head. There are so many guns in episode 2, where the first one was whether or not a woman knew how to fish.
Yeah.
And even beginning of this episode, he is debating the merits of using ham as a lure with which to catch fish. That is like the opening crawl, and by the end, Andy Griffith is saving a man's life. Andy Griffith's de-escalation process is completely insane.
Because, like, we've pointed out, he never actually addresses what a dangerous scenario they're in.
I mean, so, actually, something I want to bring up is, in episode 2 of the Andy Griffith Show, Manhunt! He actually sort of exhibits, law enforcement practices that Bill O'Reilly would hate, in that he aggressively does community-based policing. He essentially employs his knowledge of the community and his connection with the people around it, and de-escalation.
And that's a big thing, right? Andy is a community member. The way he polices is by walking around, not in an aggressive way, but he's there to uphold every part of the community. And he does have that's part of why he doesn't carry a gun. Part of why he doesn't carry a gun is he would rather have people respect him than fear his gun.
Yeah.
And that is, like, that's a lesson in, like, police work that your conservatives, your good guy with a gun advocates would fucking hate.
Yeah. Right? And admittedly, he does, while he's doing this, he is also flagrantly breaking the law.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And
Andy Griffith should be fucking fired by this point.
Grossly! Like, within the first half of episode 2, he should be fired. But it sort of feels like there were 2 lessons in this episode of Andy Griffith Show. One about community-based policing and de-escalation, and the other one about how the law is flexible and don't worry about it. And
that's going to be a regular theme in the Andy Griffith Show.
America sort of learned the wrong lesson from the Andy Griffith Show in this instance, and I feel like in almost every episode of the Andy Griffith Show, there were 2 lessons. One that was good and one that was horrific. And America pretty often learned lesson 2 while thinking they were learning lesson 1.
Alright, so Dan, we should come up with a way to, like, rate these episodes. So I'm thinking like an XY axis kind of thing. Like, one is, we'll call it the Andy meter, which is like, how good is this episode? Mm-hmm. And the FIFO meter, which is how horrifying is this episode.
Okay.
So let's start with episode 1, the new Housekeeper. On a scale of 1 to 10 Andys, how good what's the quality of this? I think it's fine. I mean,
is quality like how morally repugnant it is, or just like how pleasant it is to watch?
Like did you enjoy watching this episode? I kind of didn't. I got a couple of chuckles out of it.
I fought my way through it.
Yeah, I didn't think this was going to be a thing. So I'm gonna say that's a
2 Andys.
Okay, I'm gonna be generous and give it 3 Andys.
Yeah,
3 Andys. Now the FIFO meter also
very low.
Also very low. We're gonna call it.
Actually, I'll say 3 Fifes just because they initially established that Barney was hired strictly from nepotism and has PTSD.
Okay.
So 3 Fifes.
All right. I mean, he doesn't really do anything in this, so I'm gonna say 1.5 Fifes.
He's pretty benign, but they set the stage for him to do some fucked up shit.
Sure.
Yeah.
Alright, so, like, on that XY axis, on the Fife versus Andy meter, he's fine, whatever.
Yeah.
Episode 2, Manhunt!
I'm never going to not scream that.
Of course not. I'm watching our level spike on this thing, it's great.
Yeah.
Episode 2, Manhunt. Andy meter, how good is this episode?
Oh, fuck it, it's so good!
It's good, it rules!
I want to say 9 because later episodes are better, but it's a 9, and in terms of moral repugnancy, it's an even 5 Fifes, because for every horrible thing we witness, something good, again, like some really positive police practices done by Andy Griffith, so it sort of balances out.
Sure, I'll agree with you on 5 Fifes. I don't know if I want to go straight up to a 9, simply because I don't know if we have a big enough sample size to really determine. But yeah, I'll say like an 8. I liked watching this episode. It's entertaining. It rules. Like, it's also just so My favorite part of this is, like, it's such an intense situation that no one is handling with any sense of intensity.
No! It feels like even I think it's a reoccurring thing of people from outside Mayberry looking at people in Mayberry being like, why are you not freaking out?
Yeah!
Which, like,
why are you not upset by this?
Yeah, like, just every, like, the police chief and all the officers are constantly in have a facial expression of, like, what the fuck? There's a manhunt. There's a murderer in your town. Why are you people so chill and petty about this?
I mean, if anything, Barney is the only one who is, like, responding with the appropriate level of excitement.
Yeah,
like,
and only...
But it's just completely misplaced.
Yeah, only because the situation has finally reached Barney's emotional level.
Yeah. Like, that's the problem, right? Barney is always at episode 2.
Barney is perpetually in a state of manhunt.
Yeah, Barney is always at episode 2 level of excitement, when most of the time everyone's at episode 1 level of behavior.
I wonder is there some sort of medical condition for being in an escalated state of crisis?
Yeah, that's literally a symptom. That's PTSD, right?
Yeah.
That's literally a symptom of PTSD.
He's in a situation of manhunt, as far as I can tell, for the remainder of the show.
Yeah, forever.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we can't really say. I should say that I at least stopped watching at episode 7 because I had to stop watching because episode 7 is so toe-curlingly insane that I almost broke the TV. And I think I'm going to need the time it takes us to get past episode 7 to be able to talk about literally anything else.
All right, so that's a teaser for an upcoming episode. If we do 2 episodes per podcast, that'll be like episode 4 of the podcast.
And then episode 7 will be the next 3 episodes.
All right, well, that is it for this trial run of The Fishing Hole. Thanks for sticking around with us. If you want to hear more, you can check us out. We'll put some Twitter links up there, but you can contact me on Twitter. I'm at Schneid Remarks. That's SCHNEID Remarks. You can read my work and the work of other fine critics at Front Row Central. Dan, where can people find you on the internets?
People can find me at the Luds on Twitter. I really gotta change that handle.
I love at the Luds, and quite frankly, dude, you should have more followers because your stuff is hilarious.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so thank you for joining us on The Fish Hole. We'll join you next time we make a little trip to Mayberry. Until then, y'all come back now, you hear? That's a different show. I don't care.
Is the outro just going to be the Andy Griffith theme? Is there whistling now in the background?
If we can avoid getting sued, yeah.
I think we can just do someone, covering us whistling.
Well, I was gonna, do a little tune, singing off tune so we don't get sued. Singing off tune so we don't get sued.
We'll pay someone very little money to do a cover, and it'll technically be parody. Also, I want this entire conversation to just be, in the thing.
In the background of
right now there is someone currently doing whistling as I'm talking about how little we're going to pay them to do
Do we have a
the
bottle?
whistling.
I could probably just do it right now.
No. I insist that we underpay a person